Long ago, in a land full of green fields and tall mountains, there lived a dragon unlike any other creature the people had ever known. It was not feared because of fire or destruction, but because of something strange that no one could explain. The villagers called it the saddest dragon alive. Every night when the moon was bright and the world was quiet, the sound of heavy breathing and soft crying echoed from the hills. Children would hide under their blankets, and old men would shake their heads, saying that no human should ever go near that cave where the dragon lived. The creature had shiny silver scales that once might have looked beautiful but now were dull like old metal left in the rain. Its wings were large yet always folded, as if it had no reason to fly anymore. While other dragons in stories were told to roar and bring fire, this one lowered its head and let tears fall onto the ground. The people did not try to fight it because it never harmed anyone. Still, they feared it, not with weapons but with distance. No one wanted to be close to such sadness, as if its sorrow might spread like a sickness. In the middle of this fearful land there lived one human who was different from the rest. His name was not remembered by the storytellers, for what mattered was his heart. He was young but not a child, brave but not reckless. While others laughed at the dragon's tears or whispered about curses, he wondered if the creature was truly dangerous or if it carried a secret pain no one cared to see. At night, when the sound of the dragon's cry reached the village, he would sit by the window and listen carefully. He thought the sound was not a roar of rage but a voice filled with grief. And so in his mind a question grew stronger each day: why would the mightiest creature of all choose to cry instead of conquer? One evening he decided he could no longer sit in silence. He would go to the cave himself, even if everyone told him he was a fool. The villagers tried to stop him. Old women said, "You will never return. The dragon will swallow you whole." Strong men shouted, "Are you mad? Do you think you are braver than us?" But the young man only answered with calm words, "If it wanted to kill us it would have done so long ago. Yet it only cries. I must know why." He carried no weapon, only a small lamp and the courage in his chest. As he walked into the forest, the night grew darker. Strange sounds followed him: rustling leaves, distant howls, the snapping of branches under his own feet. His heart pounded, but he refused to turn back. Step by step he reached the mountain where the dragon's cave opened like a giant mouth. The air was cold, and the ground was wet as if even the earth had soaked in the creature's endless tears. From inside came the deep sound of sorrow, heavy and slow, like thunder that had lost all its power. The young man held his lamp higher. He wanted to see the truth with his own eyes. When he stepped closer he finally saw it, the dragon, vast and silent, sitting at the far end of the cave. Its eyes were half closed, glowing faintly in the darkness, and its body moved slowly with the weight of each breath. The creature did not roar. It did not rise to attack. It only looked at the small human standing at the entrance, and for the first time in its long life of sorrow, it seemed surprised. The young man felt no fear then, only pity. He whispered to himself, "This is not a monster. This is something else." And in that moment, the story of the saddest dragon began to change forever. The young man stood at the mouth of the cave, his lamp trembling in his hand as the soft golden light pushed away the darkness just enough to reveal the dragon's sad figure. His heart was beating like a drum, yet he did not step back. The stories told by the villagers had painted the dragon as a creature of curses, but what he saw with his own eyes did not match those tales. Instead of fire and fury, there was only sorrow heavy enough to fill the cave like smoke. The young man whispered softly, though his voice was shaking, "I am not here to hurt you." At first there was no reply, only the echo of his words bouncing off the stone walls. Then slowly the dragon's head lifted and two enormous eyes opened, glowing faintly like dying embers. The dragon's gaze was not wild but tired, the gaze of a creature that had carried too much pain for too long. The silence stretched until finally the dragon's voice rumbled through the cave, deep and rough yet strangely weak. "Why are you here, human? Do you not fear me like the others?" The young man swallowed hard but stood his ground. "I fear the unknown," he said, "but I do not fear you. I only hear your cries at night and I wonder why." The dragon tilted its head slightly as if confused by such honesty. It lowered its gaze to the ground and the cave filled once again with silence, but this time it was not empty. The dragon was thinking. The young man took a careful step closer, his lamp lighting more of the walls around him. He noticed marks on the stone like deep scratches, as if battles had been fought here long ago. He also noticed something else. The dragon's wings were folded close to its body, but the edges looked torn and scarred. His breath caught in his chest, for it was clear that the wounds were not from age but from violence. The villagers had never spoken of this. They only told stories of sadness, never of scars. He felt anger rising inside him, not at the dragon but at the people who chose fear over truth. He whispered again, though louder this time, "You are hurt. Someone has hurt you." The dragon's eyes flickered with surprise. "You see what others refuse to see," it murmured. "But it is not for you to carry. Leave now while you still can. The world does not want me, and it should not want you near me either." The young man shook his head. "I came to know the truth, and I will not turn back without it." Outside the cave the wind howled through the trees as if warning him to run, but he did not move. Instead he stepped closer again until the dragon's shadow loomed over him like a mountain. For a long moment neither spoke. Then the dragon gave a sigh so heavy it made the ground tremble. "Very well," it said. "If you wish to know, then you must stay. But once you hear my truth, your life will never be the same." The young man felt a chill, but he nodded slowly. He could sense that he was standing on the edge of something far greater than himself. Behind him the world of the village felt small and blind. In front of him was a creature broken yet full of secrets. The dragon lowered its head until its eyes were level with the human's lamp. The glow of its sorrowful gaze mixed with the soft light, creating strange shadows on the cave walls. "I was not always this way," the dragon began in a voice that echoed like distant thunder. "Once I flew across these skies free and proud. Once my fire kept away the dark. Once I had kin who soared beside me. But then something came, something not from this land." The young man's heart raced as he listened, but the dragon stopped speaking, its throat tightening as if the memories were too painful. It turned its head away, refusing to say more. The human felt a wave of suspense crash over him. He wanted to ask questions, yet he knew pushing too hard might make the dragon close its heart forever. He decided to stay quiet and simply wait. The silence stretched on, only broken by the soft sound of dripping water deep within the cave. Minutes passed, but to the young man they felt like hours. Finally the dragon whispered, "Not tonight. I cannot tell it all tonight." The young man nodded, though disappointment pressed on his chest. "Then I will return," he said. "I will come back until you are ready." The dragon looked at him long and hard, as if searching his soul. At last it gave a slow nod. "Return if you wish, but be warned, the truth is heavier than sorrow, and it may crush you if you are not strong." The young man tightened his grip on the lamp and turned to leave the cave, but his mind was on fire with questions. What force could wound a dragon? What power could turn a protector into a prisoner of grief? And most of all, what secret was the dragon hiding that no one else had dared to discover? As he stepped out into the cold night, the sound of the dragon's sigh followed him like a shadow. He walked back through the forest, but his steps were no longer heavy with fear. They were filled with determination. He knew he would return, and when he did he would demand the truth, even if it changed everything he thought he knew about his world. The night after his first visit, the young man could not sleep, his thoughts circling again and again around the dragon's words and the heavy sadness in its eyes. He remembered how close he had stood, how the creature's breath had felt like a storm pressing against his skin, yet it had not harmed him, not even with a single spark of fire. Instead it had spoken to him like a soul drowning in grief. He knew then that he could not stay away, he must return, and so when the moon rose high he took his lamp again and walked into the forest, ignoring the whispers of the villagers who thought he was cursed. When he reached the cave, the dragon was waiting, its great body curled like a hill of silver scales, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The young man's heart beat fast, but he stepped forward holding the lamp higher and said softly, "I have come back." The dragon studied him in silence, then gave a low sound that was neither a growl nor a sigh. It was something in between, a sound of surprise mixed with tiredness. "You are a strange human," it said. "No one has ever dared return twice. Most run away after the first sight." The young man swallowed hard. "I am not here to run, I am here to listen." The dragon's eyes narrowed, glowing brighter for a moment, as if testing his words. "Why do you care, human? You owe me nothing. I am sorrow itself." The young man stood firm, his voice steady. "Because I think you are not a monster. I think you are hurt, and I want to understand." The cave grew quiet again, except for the soft dripping of water from the rocks above. Then slowly the dragon lowered its head, bringing its massive eyes closer to the human, so close that the warm breath of the beast washed over him like a heavy wind. "If you wish to understand, then you must look closer," said the dragon, and it spread one of its great wings. The light of the lamp revealed deep scars across the thin skin, lines burned and cut in patterns no natural enemy could have made. The young man gasped, stepping nearer. "Without fear, who did this To you, he whispered. The dragon closed its eyes for a moment as if the memory was too painful, then opened them again with a heavy glow. Not who but what. The young man's stomach tightened. What do you mean? The dragon's voice lowered, rumbling like distant thunder. There are things beyond your world, machines of shadow, hunters of fire. They came from the sky long ago. They killed my kin, they took my home, and when they left me broken. I tried to fight, I tried to protect, but I failed, and now I am alone. The young man felt his breath grow shallow. He had never heard such words in the village. There were no stories of machines from the sky, only of the crying dragon. He wanted to ask more, but before he could, the dragon gave a warning growl, quiet but sharp enough to freeze him. Do not speak of this outside these walls. The others would never believe you. They would only fear more. The young man nodded quickly. I will not tell them, I promise. I only want to help. The dragon tilted its head, studying him for a long time, then finally said, help me. Why would a fragile human help a broken dragon? The young man lifted the lamp, his face glowing with determination. Because even broken, you are not evil, and if the machines come back, maybe we will both need each other. The dragon gave a sound almost like a laugh, but filled with bitterness. No one has ever spoken to me. So the young man took a bold step forward and placed his hand against the cold stone of the cave floor, his voice calm and sure. Then let me be the first. If you trust me, I will stand with you for a moment. The dragon said nothing, then slowly lowered its head until its nose touched the ground near the human. The lamp flickered in the heat of its breath. The young man felt the great sadness pressing around him, yet he did not move away. He met the dragon's gaze, steady and brave, and in that moment something shifted inside the cave. Two beings, one human, one dragon, both alone in their own ways, shared the beginning of trust. Outside, the forest whispered in the wind, and the moon climbed higher as if watching over them. Neither knew what would come next, but both understood one thing: their meeting was no longer chance. It was the start of something greater and far more dangerous than either could yet imagine. The cave was silent except for the soft crackle of the young man's lamp, yet within that silence the dragon's breathing sounded heavy and uneven like a storm trapped behind mountains. The young man waited patiently, for he knew forcing questions would close the creature's heart. Instead he stood still, his eyes fixed on the glowing sadness that burned faintly in the dragon's gaze. At last the dragon spoke, its deep voice shaking the walls of the cave. I told you before, human, that I was not always this way. You have seen my scars, but you have not heard the story of how they came to be. If you truly wish to know, then listen and carry the weight, for once spoken the burden cannot be forgotten. The young man nodded without hesitation. I will listen, and I will not turn away. The dragon gave a long sigh, then lowered its body, resting its chin against the cold stone. Its eyes looked far away, as though they were staring not at the cave but at memories carved into time. Long ago I was the guardian of this land. The dragon began. My wings spread across the skies, my fire lit the darkness. I was not alone, many of my kin soared beside me, strong dragons, fierce and proud. Together we protected the valleys and the people below from the beasts that wandered from the mountains. We were not worshipped, we were not feared, we were respected as part of the world itself. But then one night the stars broke open, the sky was torn apart, and from it came shadows. They were not beasts of flesh, they were not men of earth. They were machines, cold, hard, merciless. Their bodies were black metal, their eyes red fire. They fell from the heavens with a roar louder than thunder, and they came for us. We fought back. I remember the first battle. I remember the flames rising higher than mountains. We struck them with fire. We clawed at their steel shells, but they did not bleed, they did not cry. They only moved forward without rest, without fear. One by one my kin fell, their wings torn, their cries silenced. The ground shook with their deaths. The people below saw only flashes in the sky, and they hid in terror. They never knew what we faced. They only heard our roars and believed it was our rage, but it was not rage, it was desperation. I fought until my wings bled, I fought until my fire turned to ash, but in the end the machines were too many, too strong. They hunted us like prey, and when the battle ended I was the last. I crawled back to this cave broken, my kin were gone. The sky was quiet and the earth carried the scars of fire. I have lived here since, drowning in the memories of screams that no one else remembers, and when the night grows still I cannot hold the sorrow inside. It spills from me in cries that echo across the land. That is why they call me the saddest dragon alive. The young man stood frozen, his lamp flickering in his hand, his heart heavy with the weight of the dragon's truth. He imagined the sky filled with burning machines, the dragons falling one after another until only this one remained. He whispered softly, so that his voice would not break. They never knew, they thought you were a curse. The dragon closed its eyes. I know they never saw the real enemy, they saw only me and my tears, and so they built their stories of fear. It does not matter anymore, my kind are gone. I am the last, and soon even I will fade. The young man clenched his fists. No, that is not true, you are still here, and if those machines return then the people must know what they face, not you but them. The dragon opened its eyes again, staring at the human with a strange mixture of sorrow and wonder. You are only one man, why do you speak as if you could change the fate of the world? The young man's voice was steady. Because I believe truth can change everything, and I will not let your pain remain hidden. The dragon gave a low sound, deep and rumbling, almost like a laugh, but filled with sadness. You are bold, human, perhaps too bold, yet there is something in you I cannot ignore. Maybe you are right, maybe the world should know, but beware if the Shadows return, they will not stop with me, they will come for all, and your people are not ready. The young man felt fear touch him like ice, but he did not back away. He lifted his lamp higher and said, then we will prepare together, you and I. Silence followed his words, heavy and endless. Then slowly the dragon nodded, a motion so small yet so powerful that it shook the young man's heart. Very well, human, if you truly wish to stand with me, then your path begins here, but no. This once you walk it, there will be no turning back. The young man met the dragon's gaze unflinching. I have already chosen, and in that moment a bond stronger than fear began to form between them, a bond that would soon be tested in ways neither could yet imagine. The young man left the cave with the dragon's story echoing inside his mind like thunder that refused to fade. He walked through the forest, his lamp glowing weak in the cold wind, yet the fire in his heart was strong, stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. He had heard the truth, and now he carried it like a secret flame. But as he stepped into the village the next morning, he found suspicious eyes waiting for him. The people gathered around, whispering with anger and fear, he has been to the dragon. Again one old woman hissed, another man shouted, it is dangerous, he will bring death to us all. The young man tried to speak, but they did not listen. They pulled him before the elders demanding answers, and when they asked where he had gone he did not lie. He stood tall and said, I went to the dragon, I spoke to it, I saw with my own eyes that it has harmed no one. The crowd gasped, some with disbelief, others with fury. One of the elders slammed his staff against the ground. Foolish boy, do you not see it? Tricks you with sorrow, but it is a beast, it is evil, it will strike when we are weak. The young man shook his head. No, you are wrong, it is not what you think. It cries because it is alone, because it has lost everything. It is not our enemy, it is something else, something greater. But his words only fed their fear. They muttered about curses and spells about the dragon bending his mind. The elder pointed a trembling finger. You are blinded, you speak for it as if it were human. This cannot be allowed. We must end this once and for all. We must kill the dragon before it brings ruin. The young man's blood ran cold. He stepped forward and raised his voice louder than before. If you go against it, you will make the greatest mistake of your lives. It is not our enemy. The true enemy comes from beyond the skies. But the villagers only laughed bitterly, shaking their heads. Beyond the skies? What nonsense you speak. The young man felt the weight of hopelessness pressing on his chest, but he did not bend. He clenched his fists and declared, if you march against the dragon you will have to pass through me. The crowd erupted in anger. Some shouted traitor, some cried madman, yet in the middle of their rage his words spread like sparks of doubt. A few faces softened uncertain, but most were too blinded by fear. The elders ordered the men to gather weapons, spears, arrows, fire. They would march at sunset and burn the cave. The young man's heart pounded. He knew he could not fight them all, yet he also knew he could not betray the dragon. So when night fell and the villagers moved as an angry wave toward the mountains, he ran ahead, slipping into the forest, his legs aching but his will unbroken. He reached the cave breathless and called out, dragon, dragon, they are coming. The great beast stirred from its slumber, lifting its head with slow heavy motion. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and it asked in a voice like rumbling stone, who is coming? The young man's chest heaved with each breath. The villagers, they bring weapons, they mean to kill you. The dragon was silent for a moment, then gave a low bitter sound. So it begins again. Sorrow becomes fear, and fear becomes hate. Perhaps this is my fate. The young man stepped forward, shaking his head. No, I will not let them hurt you. I will stand between them and you. The dragon lowered its gaze on him, its eyes deep pools of grief and doubt. You are only one human, they are many. What can you do? He lifted his lamp high, his face set with fierce determination. I can speak the truth, even if no one listens. I can stand in front of you, even if they strike me down. Maybe that is enough. Maybe that will show them you are not their enemy. For a long moment the dragon said nothing, then slowly it lowered its great head until its nose touched the ground near the young man. Once again the cave filled with the heat of its breath. Then in a low voice it said, you are brave human, braver than any I have seen, perhaps even foolish, but your heart is true. If you choose to stand, then stand, and I will not stop you. The young man turned back toward the cave entrance, the sound of villagers drawing closer, carrying torches, echoing through the forest like the march of doom. He clenched his fists and whispered to himself, I will not let them kill what they do not understand. And as the glow of angry fire approached the dark trees, the young man stood tall, a small fragile figure before the cave. Behind him the dragon watched in silence, and before him the future burned, uncertain and full of danger. Yet he did not step aside, for he had made his choice. The forest shook with the sound of angry voices as the villagers moved through the trees, their torches lighting the night like a river of fire. The young man stood at the mouth of the cave, his lamp in one hand, his body trembling, but his will firm. Behind him the dragon's glowing eyes burned like faint stars in the dark. The villagers stopped when they saw him standing there alone, his shadow cast long against the rocks. One of the elders stepped forward, his staff raised. Foolish boy, step aside, we have come to end the beast. The young man lifted his chin and shouted above their noise, you are blind, it is not your enemy, you do not see the truth, you fight the wrong battle. The crowd roared back with anger, traitor, cursed liar. The elder raised his staff again, move or be struck down. The young man's heart pounded, but he spread his arms wide, blocking the entrance. Then before anyone could take a step the ground rumbled, a deep tremor rolling beneath their feet. Torches flickered, men stumbled, the Villagers froze as the trees beyond the clearing shivered, not from wind but from something far heavier. The young man's eyes widened. He knew the sound. It was not the dragon, it was something else, something worse. The dragon stirred behind him, its voice deep and sharp. They have come. The villagers turned in confusion. What is it? What trick is this? Then from the shadows between the trees something moved, tall black shapes emerging with red glowing eyes, machines with legs like steel claws and bodies of armor. Their footsteps pounded like hammers on stone. The villagers gasped in terror. Some dropped their weapons, others screamed, demons, demons. But the young man shouted, no, not demons. These are the true enemy. These are the ones who hurt the dragon. But his words were swallowed by panic as the first machine raised an arm that shifted into a blade of fire. It slashed through the trees, sending sparks and smoke into the air. The villagers scattered like frightened birds. Chaos broke out. Torches fell to the ground. The elder screamed retreat, but the machines were already moving forward, relentless and merciless. The dragon rose fully now, its wings spreading wide. Though still scarred, its body filled the cave entrance. It looked at the young man with fire glowing faintly in its throat. You wished them to see the truth, then let them see it now. With a roar that shook the mountains, the dragon leapt forward, its massive body slamming into the first machine. Claws tearing against steel, sparks flew. Fire burst from its mouth, engulfing the creature in bright flames. The villagers froze in shock, watching the beast they had feared fighting not against them but for them. The young man shouted, run if you want to live, but look with your own eyes, see who the real enemy is. Another machine lunged, its blade slicing toward the dragon's wing. The young man cried out, but the dragon twisted, striking with its tail, sending the machine crashing into the ground. Yet a third advanced, its red eyes fixed on the human. The young man stumbled back, fear gripping him. He had no weapon, no shield, but before the blade could fall, the dragon moved again, planting itself between the machine and the boy. Fire erupted, burning across the night. The villagers saw it clearly now. The dragon was protecting the human, protecting all of them. Still many ran screaming into the forest, but some stopped, their fear breaking into realization. The elder himself trembled, his staff shaking as he whispered, this cannot be, this is no curse, this is truth. The young man turned to him, his voice fierce. Do you see now? It never was your enemy. These monsters came from the sky, they killed its kind, and now they have returned. If you wish to live, you must stand together. But the elder's voice broke. We are not warriors, we cannot fight such things. The young man shouted back, then let the dragon fight, but do not call it a monster again. The battle raged, fire, smoke and steel filling the clearing. The dragon roared, its voice like thunder as it ripped through the machines, but more shadows moved in the distance, their glowing eyes multiplying. The young man felt dread rise inside him. This was only the beginning. The dragon fought with every breath, every strike of claw and flame, yet even as it burned one machine another advanced. The villagers who had not fled huddled together, torn between fear and awe. The young man looked at them, his voice sharp, if you cannot fight, then help each other, stay together, do not give the enemy your fear. The elder dropped to his knees, staring at the boy and the beast, his old eyes wide with the weight of truth. At last he whispered, we were wrong, we were blind. And for the first time in generations the villagers looked upon the dragon not as a curse but as their shield. The night blazed with fire and metal, screams and roars, and in the center of it all stood the human and the Saddest dragon, alive side by side against the shadows that had finally returned. The night was alive with fire and smoke, the clash of steel and the roar of the dragon shaking the very earth. The villagers who had once come with torches to kill now stood frozen, their eyes wide as they watched the dragon fight not against them but against the real enemy, black machines that moved like shadows with eyes of red flame. The young man stood at the mouth of the cave, his lamp dim now but his spirit burning brighter than ever. He shouted above the chaos, do you see now? Open your eyes, this is the truth. The dragon is not your curse, it is your shield. The villagers trembled, some still afraid, but others began to nod, their voices weak but certain. We see, we see. The elder dropped his staff, his old hands shaking, tears filling his eyes as he whispered, we have been blind all these years, calling the wrong creature our enemy. The dragon slammed its tail into another machine, sending sparks flying. Fire burst from its throat, burning through armor, yet even with all its strength it was clear the dragon was struggling. The scars of old battles slowed it, the weight of sorrow pressed on its wings, still it refused to fall. Its massive body stood between the villagers and the advancing shadows. The young man ran closer, his voice strong, you are not alone, not anymore, fight and we will stand with you. The dragon turned its glowing eyes upon him, a deep light flickering within them like hope born from ashes. For the first time in centuries it did not feel truly alone. Together human and dragon faced the enemy. The villagers who had fled began to return, slowly drawn by the sight of courage. They saw the young man unarmed but unbroken, they saw the dragon bleeding but unyielding, and something changed within their hearts. They picked up their fallen torches not to burn the dragon but to light the ground, to guide each other to safety, to show that they were no longer blind. One of the younger men shouted, we will help even if we cannot fight, we will not run. Another cried, we will not let the shadow take our land. The machines advanced, their claws tearing through earth, their blades shining in the firelight, but now they faced not only the dragon's fury but the strength of human unity. The battle raged on until at last, with one final roar, the dragon unleashed a storm of fire greater than before. It engulfed the last of the machines, burning them until nothing but twisted black remains lay scattered across the clearing. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of flames. The villagers stood Still unable to believe what their eyes had seen, the dragon breathing heavy, its wings torn, its body covered in wounds, lowered itself to the ground. The young man rushed to its side, his voice full of worry. "You did it, you saved them." The dragon's eyes, dim but steady, turned to him and rumbled in a tired voice, "No, human, we did it together." The villagers slowly stepped forward, their fear gone, replaced with shame and awe. The elder bowed his head low, his voice trembling. "Forgive us, dragon, we called you cursed, we called you monster when you were our protector all along." The dragon closed its eyes for a moment, its breath slow and heavy. "I do not seek your forgiveness, I only seek the truth to be known." The young man stood tall, facing the villagers, his voice clear. "Then let us never forget tonight. Let us remember who the true enemy is, not the dragon, not sorrow, but the shadows that fall from the sky." The villagers murmured agreement, nodding their heads. The elder raised his staff once more, not in anger, but in respect. "From this day forward you are no longer the Saddest dragon, you are our guardian once more." But the dragon shook its head, its deep voice carrying across the silent crowd, "Do not be quick to celebrate. This was only one battle. The shadows are many, and they will return when the sky opens again. They will come not for me alone, but for all of you." The villagers paled, their new courage trembling, but the young man stepped forward, his eyes fierce. "Then we will be ready. We will stand together, human and dragon side by side." The dragon studied him for a long moment, then slowly gave a nod, its massive head bowing in respect. "You have given me hope, human, something I thought lost forever. Guard it well, for hope is fire and fire must never die." The villagers gathered close, no longer enemies but allies. They looked upon the dragon with reverence and upon the young man with gratitude. The night was still heavy with smoke and sorrow, but beneath it burned the spark of a new beginning. The boy who dared to see what no one else would, and the dragon who carried endless grief had found each other, and together they had revealed the truth. As the dawn began to rise, painting the mountains with pale light, the young man felt a strange certainty in his heart. The story was not ending, it was only beginning, and somewhere beyond the clouds in the endless dark more shadows stirred, waiting to fall again. But now the world would not face them blind, now the world would be ready.